Hi, I'm Liv and welcome back to the Book Nook. Who's that? Who's that? Can you hear him? There may well be an undercurrent of purring now through this video because he's decided to sit down there. What are you doing? Hi guys, so this is yet another video where I don't really feel like doing this, or I don't really feel like doing anything. First off, thank you so much for all your lovely, kind comments on my last video. It's really nice to have that kind of response and just to kind of know that I'm not on my own with struggling with this bullshit. He is purring so loudly right now. What a cutie. I'm just finding I've got no energy for anything. I can only do something for about 10 minutes at a time before it just sucks all the energy out of me and I'm like, ugh, I want to go to sleep. I've been doing a lot of naps. I can do those for longer than 10 minutes. So yeah, just once more feeling really meh and struggling with the monotony of this and blah blah. So for today's video, I'm going to be wrapping up the books I read for a winter book hibernation. So it shouldn't be too long a video because I didn't read quite as much as I thought I was going to. I don't know what this was. So hosted by Simon over at Savage Reads and Tom at Tom Reads Things. This is a bookish kind of readathon. I don't know what these things are called, but basically it's just a week of reading wintery books in it. And there were a list of prompts and I chose some books from there, and I spoke about how I was calling it a TB maybe-R because I often set TBRs and then beat myself up for not being able to read all of them or not wanting to read any of them, so I chose some books for me to choose from, if that makes sense. So let's get on to what I did read. Now the first book I read was on my Kindle, which is Twilight Blue, which feels really wintry, so extra point? There's no points in this, I just like to win. And that was Winter by Winter by Jordan Stratford. Now this is a novel, a Viking set novel, ostensibly about Lagertha, who, as I mentioned in the last one, you will know a bit about if you've watched Vikings. Now the real history of Lagertha as an actual person, I'm not so hot on. I don't actually know a lot of my true history of a lot of kind of Viking figures. It's something I need to learn more about with regards to the Vikings. And you know I love manor shit. Now I'd say for the first quarter of this book, I still wasn't sure if I liked it. The writing style is really strange. It's kind of poetic, but also really frenetic and frantic and quite... But the more I read and the more I kind of got into it, this book charmed me. To start with, there were some real kind of weird sentences and weird things going on, and I was like, oh, that's a choice, not sure how I feel about this. And it was just sitting really weird, but as the book progressed, with it being so kind of frantic and full on, you kind of just went with it. One thing I will say is, I don't know whether it's the formatting on my Kindle or what, but there was the very first words actually I read and I was like, oh, Aswan, okay, Aswan, that must be like a name of somebody, and we're going along and it's this description. I'm like, okay, that's a bit weird. And it kind of, I think that was part of how I was immediately off centre, because I was like, that was weird. Wasn't until the second half of the book when they're talking about, it's a swan. A swan, not Aswan. Halfway through the book, one of the other characters is talking about the events that were happening right at the beginning of the book, and they're going, oh, did you see the swan? Is that the swan? The swan! So that was a really proud and smart moment for me, so I can't really blame the book for that. That was just me. I was a bit nervous going into this book because I'd heard really mixed reviews, and the main thing that I'd read in reviews that I do agree with is that there's too much going on for this shorter book. This book encompasses things that happen over years, and there's lots of time jumps and lots of stuff going on very, very quickly, but also not very quickly. Similar to experiences I've had with other books lately, I kind of wished it was longer. I wished it gave things more time to develop, but at the same time, I don't, because as I say, this book kind of really charmed me. Although everything was happening very quickly and squished in, you'd think you wouldn't be able to fully kind of develop any feelings for any characters either way, but actually, the way Jordan Stratford writes these characters, like Ragnar Lothbrok in this one, he's a cutie. I don't know whether he should be, probably not, but he's actually kind of really charming and well, that's meant to be pretty true of him, but anyway. And Lagertha is really badass, and she's not been butchered as much as she has been in the TV show. So you know what, this book was kind of like 4 seasons of the Vikings TV show, smushed into one, and the writer was, as I said in my review, maybe just on the right side of a Shrooms high with the writing style. So if you're after something that is kind of just escapism, a lot going on, thing after thing after thing after thing, but somehow the characters are nice and fairly rounded and you kind of do take them to heart, and Rorik's a twant, then Winter by Winter by Jordan Stratford is for you. It charmed me. I wasn't expecting it to. First quarter of the book, not sure on this. By the end, I was like, yeah, I kind of love that. After Winter by Winter, I then read the book that was kind of the main prompt for Winter Book Hibernation, and that is Diane Setterfield's Bellman and Black. It's got alliteration, it's got blue on the cover, it's got a feather, all that jazz. So that was the one that kind of ticked all the main prompts. So I thought, right, I'm definitely going to give that one a go. Now, I really enjoyed Diane Setterfield's Once Upon a River. Again, as I mentioned, wasn't one I was expecting to enjoy, but really did. This one is about a young boy called William Bellman, who, at the beginning of the novel, he shoots a rook out of a tree with a catapult from an impossible distance. And that kind of changes him and changes his life. And then it goes through... It's kind of just a beautifully written... following along this one man through his life and seeing what happens to him, all the things that happen to his family, his career, and it's just, I don't know, it's not heavy on plot. I can't really sort of... It's so thin on plot that if I tell you what happens, it would spoil it for you, because what there is plot-wise deserves to not be spoiled. But it's not so much about plot. This is very much a character-led, character-driven book. William Bellman, I kind of really fell in love with him, even when he was a bit of an idiot and he was so focused on his career and not his family and focused on the wrong things. You kind of saw what was going on and saw why he was doing that. And as with Once Upon a River, Diane Setterfield's writing is just this beautiful kind of cascading thing that you can't help but get swept up along in. And it was a pun with Once Upon a River. It doesn't quite work with this, but it's beautiful. You fly along, aloft on the wings of her writing. There we go. And it turned into this really kind of beautiful musing on grief and death and life and how we react to those things and what our driving forces are. Very focused on death, this book, but not in a way that is uncomfortable. It's beautiful and very touching. The one thing I'd say is the ending of the book for me didn't quite... It kind of just wrapped up very quickly. It's like everything was meandering along, this lovely sense of momentum and things building and building, and then oh, okay. So that's the one thing that I'd say let this down for me. But still, really, really enjoyed Bellman and Black. If you liked Once Upon a River, you'll really like this one. If you've never read it before and you're thinking of checking out some Diane Setterfield, either Bellman and Black or Once Upon a River will do you nicely. Thank you very much. Also, pleasant surprise. Shouldn't have been as much of a surprise as it was, given that it's got rooks in it, but a nice little mention of Hugin and Munin in there as well, so a nice bit of Norse mythology in Bellman and Black. Very pleased to see it. Then I read Tim Winton's In the Winter Dark. I picked this one up because it's got winter in the title, it's icy blue, and it's short, let's be real. Now I think, unfortunately for me, this was a case of probably right book, wrong time, not being in the right headspace for a book like this. The premise and the idea behind it is something that I know normally, maybe at another time, I would absolutely love. This idea of a valley where all these sort of drifters come to. Although, as I'm saying this, that's what it says on the blurb. This valley is where drifters come to. And it kind of, I think, actually missold it a little bit for me. Because there's only like 3 people in this valley, and the way the blurb sells it, I kind of felt like it was going to be almost like a bit of a commune or a bigger village than it actually was. Things happen in my brain as they're coming out my mouth. That's fun. But the premise of this isolated community and a monster on the loose, and also this guy dreaming, and he's dreaming other people's dreams, it sounded really cool. But it wasn't quite what I expected from the blurb and the description. The writing was really cool, but I think with it being such a short novel, again, it just didn't get the chance to develop. And it's weird, the shorter novels I've read are the ones that I've had the problems with lately, because I haven't felt like they've had the room to grow and develop characters and ideas and things, but at the same time, I haven't got the attention span for longer books. What's that all about? So while things were quite spooky and atmospheric, I didn't feel they were spooky and atmospheric enough. It was the kind of novel that was trying to do 2 things and merge them together, this kind of notion of the environment and an outside beast and kind of the secrets you keep and this community, but it kind of didn't fully mesh them for me. But as I say, I did enjoy the writing style, and I'm not going to discount reading any Tim Winton in the future. This was not the right book at the right time, I don't think. Next up, I read Mary Oliver's Winter Hours, but I didn't read all of it, so this is a collection of, there's prose poems, poetry, and sort of kind of more essays in there as well. So one of the sections is 4 poets, and it's talking about 4 other poets. I skipped that one because it felt too much like being back at uni in a way I wasn't here for, and it just wasn't what I was after at the time. But the rest, the poetry, the prose poetry, and the little snippets of prose, I read and absolutely loved. Mary Oliver is someone who, I think I've read bits of hers again while I was at uni. I think I've got a couple of her collections on my shelves. I seem to remember buying some, but I can't see any, but I'll have another look. And she's someone who I've never really delved into fully, but oh my gosh, the writing is absolutely beautiful. The poems, there were less poems in there than I was expecting, but the ones there were in there were some wintry poems, so that tick, got another prompt, and they were really beautiful. But the piece that really struck me and I've really kind of taken to heart was the titular Winter Hours piece. The very first paragraph of the titular piece, Winter Hours, was reading it after I'd come off the back of reading In the Winter Dark, not really fussed by it, feeling a bit miserable, this kind of malaise and monotony of this lockdown and the fatigue of it all, just feeling so bleh. And I'd read some of the other poems and pieces in Winter Hours and was really enjoying it, and then this kind of just hit me like a truck. In the winter I'm writing about, there was much darkness. Darkness of nature, darkness of event, darkness of the spirit. The sprawling darkness of not knowing. And it just, and from there, the whole piece just kind of went, oh. And then it became this kind of meditation on the relationship between nature and the spirit and spirituality and all of this, and Mary Oliver's relationship to nature and her spirit and faith and things like this and hope, and it's just absolutely beautiful. I wasn't expecting to read a prose piece like that and be so kind of, I don't know what the feeling was, but suffused with this feeling of, oh, this is nice. You know, like how I went from really quite coherent and professional to just, oh, this is nice. There's something for everybody. It was just absolutely luminous is the word I would use to describe it, with a wanker alert on there, but it was just absolutely gorgeous, and I'm definitely looking forward to reading more Mary Oliver in the future, and I suggest you do too. Then for the last book of Winter Book Hibernation, I had about a day and a half left, and I wasn't sure whether I had time to finish another book. I was looking at the books that I had put on my TB maybe, and I was like, don't fancy any of them, and I just had another look at my shelves, and I found one that I can't believe hadn't made it onto my TB maybe anyway, and that is Cold Earth by Sarah Moss. So this has got an icy blue cover, doesn't have winter in the title, but it does have cold, but it's about a load of archaeologists who go to Greenland to excavate a Viking settlement. Hello! And all sorts of spooky and frightening things start happening. Why did I forget I had this? And I really enjoyed it. There was this beautiful rendering of Greenland and how cold and isolated and stark it was. The juxtaposition between the archaeologists there now with their equipment, but also how frugally they were living, and some of the flashbacks to the Viking settlers there and what was going on there. Also the spooky and weird stuff mainly channeled through one main character who thought she was having dreams and was seeing some of the old settlers of this settlement, and she isn't an archaeologist, she is a writer. So this interesting kind of thing of, okay, the first one to be seeing these ghosts and experiencing these things is the creative one, also the one with mental health problems, whereas the archaeologists, the more scientific based ones, are going, what are you talking about? So the characters in themselves, they were likeable one minute, really unlikable the next. I don't think they're meant to be particularly likeable. First main character we hear from, Nina, I kind of liked her. She said some funny things, but actually she was also really self-absorbed and quite annoying. But I think what happened was when you're reading that character, Sarah Moss's writing is so good that you actually kind of can't help but nodding along with that character and going, oh yeah, no, I feel you, and thinking that this other character's a bit of a bitch and a bit of a kind of vain wanker. But then, of course, when you switch over to Ruth, you're like, oh no, you're cool and Nina's really annoying, and I definitely couldn't live for a couple of weeks in Greenland with nothing going on other than this crazy lady having weird dreams and freaking everybody out. They're a really great kind of character study in isolation and what that kind of isolation does to people. Oh yeah, I mean, that was the whole other bit of the novel, which was why I was like, maybe I shouldn't be reading this, is while they go to Greenland, a pandemic starts raging across the country and they lose contact with the outside world. Not quite sure how I forgot to mention that bit. But I think that's because the pandemic bit doesn't become as prevalent in the storyline, so it's kind of not something, if you ask me to describe Cold Earth, I'm gonna describe it how I did at the beginning. I'm kind of gonna forget about the pandemic bit. Even though, spoiler alert, the main end of the novel is them, the plane not turning up and thinking that they're all gonna die because the world has closed and nobody knows they're there anymore. And I'm not sure whether that whole pandemic bit landed fully, because I didn't really feel the tension of whether or not the plane was going to turn up, whether or not they were going to be forgotten about. Even though they start losing contact with the outside world, I didn't quite feel that fear and nervousness enough. It was more the fear of these spooky ghosties that was prevalent. He wants chin scratches. It's okay, I can multitask. So yeah, I really did enjoy it. It was beautifully written. I mean, I love Sarah Moss's writing anyway. I think you can, in the nicest way possible, tell it's a debut novel, because there are some things that are underdeveloped and not fully realised. And I say that not to be unkind, and to be honest, I've read second, third, fourth, fifth novels from other writers that are less kind of accomplished and readable and beautifully done than this first novel by Sarah Moss. So, it's good. So that little stack is what I read for Winter Book Hibernation, and I'm feeling pretty good about it. I really enjoyed Winter Book Hibernation, so thank you very much to Simon and Tom for hosting and giving these prompts. There were some books here that I wouldn't have read otherwise and wouldn't have got around to if I hadn't remembered and gone looking, because I didn't want anything off my TBR. I hope you enjoyed Winter Book Hibernation. If you joined in, if you did, what did you read? Did you read Bellman and Black? What did you think? Have a little chat with me in the comments down below. Thank you again for being so lovely after my last video, and have a little chat in the comments if you're feeling a bit meh and need little chatties. I'm always on Twitter. I'm off to go and give this purring cat some big smooshies on the head because he's purring really loudly and I want to smoosh his head. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye!